You know, Brian's like, I was raised in a family with 8 kids, and unlike today's families, because there were so many kids at the table, we, we had and it really wasn't as bad as it sounds, but the rule was when you were a kid, when you were at the table or in any other social function, you could only speak when you were spoken to in order to avoid complete chaos in our household. And of course, the modern theory of how your children behave, and I'm sure Cam can vouch for this, is that it's totally, the kids talk whenever they want, and the parents could barely get in a word edgewise on this stuff. But Brian must have been raised in the same school that I was, because he speaks when he's spoken to. All right, we have continuing the State Budget Committee hearings, and we have the Department of Natural Resources with us this morning, and Cam Clark, the Director of the Department. Cam, thank you for coming, and Mike Smith, the CFO. So we're going to give you the floor, and I think our schedule says 30 minutes, and I've already taken up 10 of your 30, so whatever you'd like to say for the next 20 minutes would be fine.
Good morning, Chairman Kenley and members of the committee. As I was introduced, I'm Cam Clark. I'm the Director of the Department of Natural Resources. And with me are the executive staff of DNR, and I'd like to introduce them. Many of you know them already, but to my right is Mike Smith. Mike is Deputy Director of our Administrative Management divisions. He's our CFO, and I've leaned on Mike quite heavily, as you can imagine, over the last couple months. Behind me is John Davis, who many of you know. John is our Deputy Director. He oversees our landholding divisions. To his right is Joe Hogue, a Deputy Director, also our Chief Legal Counsel, who heads up our legal division, as well as the law enforcement division. And behind the two of them is Chris Smith, who I'm sure you all know. Chris was our legislative liaison before he became our Deputy Director, and heads up our regulatory divisions. And an amazing executive staff upon whom I rely very heavily, and can't begin to say how fortunate I am to have them with me today and every day. Organizationally, I'm convinced that the general public do not have a full understanding of everything DNR does, but we are a very diverse agency. We have 20-plus divisions. We have landholding divisions, regulatory divisions, many administrative divisions. We have organized into bureaus under 1493, and those can generally be described as Bureau of Lands, Bureau of Regulatory Divisions, administrative and legal and law enforcement. We have a rulemaking committee known as Natural Resources Commission. The commission is created under 1410. It's a body of 12 individuals, 4 representatives from agencies, INDOT, IDEM, Tourism, and of course DNR. There's a representative from the Indiana Academy of Sciences, a representative from the Natural Resources Advisory Council, and 6 citizen members appointed by the governor. We do, as I mentioned, have a law enforcement division. And I am confident in saying that to become a conservation officer, you have to go through the most rigorous intellectual and physical training of any law enforcement agency in the state. So we're very proud of our officers. We are an agency of about 1,200 hardworking employees who accomplish great things every day using state, federal, and private funds. We undertake a number of projects, many of them very unique. A couple of key projects. Every September we have what we call a Hoosier Outdoor Experience, and we partner with the Central Indiana Ford Dealers, National Wild Turkey Federation, and some other conservation organizations to put on a free weekend where we get over 20,000 people come to Fort Harrison State Park, and they have an opportunity to try hands-on 50 different outdoor activities, and it's very well received, and we've done this for about 5 or 6 years, and we continue to get a lot of compliments on the program, not only from the attendees, but from our sponsors as well. We also administer the Bicentennial Nature Trust grant program, which I'm sure you're aware of, and that's a conservation program put together to culminate in 2016, which is the state's bicentennial, and it's designed to help local organizations conserve land throughout the state. We have other conservation programs that we also administer. If I could take a moment to talk about some of our key accomplishments during this biennium that touch all parts of the state. We finished a radial bird watching tower this year in Dune State Park. It's a really neat structure. It's ADA accessible. It's up high above Lake Michigan, and it's a steel and wood structure. The wood was donated by our Division of Forestry, about 20,000 square feet of white oak. We will be breaking ground very soon on a 6,000 square foot visitor center at Goose Pond Fish and Wildlife area down in Greene County. That is a heavily anticipated groundbreaking by a lot of people around the state, and particularly Greene County. We have refinanced our bonds to the Indiana Finance Authority that allowed us to undertake a number of projects, among which is multiple duplex cabins that are going in at Brown County State Park. During this time, we installed a barrier fence in Eagle Marsh, which is just south of Fort Wayne. That is a low area that can flood, and it provides basically a entryway from the Wabash River system into the Lake Erie system. And this fencing is designed to prevent aquatic invasive species, primarily the Asian carp, from getting from the Wabash River, where they do exist, into the Lake Erie system through the Maumee River. And if they get into the Maumee River, there's nothing that's going to stop them from getting into Lake Erie.
Cam, as you were speaking, I've been glancing through your operating account summary here, and maybe Mike can help me with the answer to this, or maybe Brian, maybe you might need to step in here. But when I look at the very last page of this, it has, on the next to the last page, it has the general fund amount, the dedicated funds, and then it has federal funds. And as I look at it, if I look at the submitted actual FY 2013, all up and down that column, the dedicated funds and the federal funds are both significantly higher than the submitted amounts for FY 16 and 17. The federal funds dropped by about half, and the dedicated funds dropped by about 20 million, and so we're showing a total budget movement during that period from 166 million to 132 million. And I guess the two questions that I would have are, help me understand how these numbers, give me an explanation of why these numbers look like they do, and then secondly, are we running the DNR on the basis that we can run it and provide the same or better levels of service and opportunity as we have in the past? So I don't know who wants to answer that, but let's start there if we could.
How about a two-part answer? See if Mike can take the numbers question, and I'll take the second question.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe there's been some redefinition on federal funds and dedicated funds that were picked up earlier in, like you were saying, fiscal 13, fiscal 12, and what have you. And through the Hyperion budgetary system, I believe it's picking up numbers that used to be defined in one manner that's being defined currently in another.
So the money isn't gone away, it's just being redefined and redistributed, and probably in some cases maybe still ending up for the same purpose or use. Would that be fair to say that? Okay. And then what about the overall totals there, Mike, in terms of the difference between the budget that we have for the next biennium and what we have had in the past? it's admirable to hold your expenses under control, but we need to make sure we're delivering what we want to do.
And all agencies have been refining how they do business over a number of previous bienniums. This is no different. And what we have, one of the approaches that we have taken is to try and keep our proposed budget at or near the fiscal 15 appropriated levels.
Okay.
But one of the discussions that we had with the budget folks was increasing revenue opportunities. DNR is unique in many respects, but one of which is that we have opportunities to raise our own revenue. And so one of the things that we have been discussing and are working towards is to increase those opportunities over time, including during this upcoming biennium, so that we can add to some of these dedicated accounts without having to rely on additional general fund money.
Would that be done through your rulemaking process? Do you have to do that in order to raise revenues, or is this other types of activities that don't involve the rulemaking process?
Put together, we have two divisions that we're focusing on, although there are others. And they have sort of a menu of opportunities that we've gone through. And some of those opportunities exist through statute. Some are programs that we have. So in order to make changes, sometimes we can do them in-house. Sometimes we need to go to the Natural Resources Commission to make those changes. But it's not one size fits all in terms of how we can implement some of these changes.
Okay. Brian, do you have anything that you might want to add in kind of helping us to understand how these numbers are moving around?
Echo what Mike and Cam have said, and in terms of increasing opportunities, DNR is in a unique position, sort of like the state fair, to raise revenue, and we're working with them on ways to help them maximize their potential there.
In doing that, would you say that probably the concept that might be applied there would be that a user fee is sort of a direct way of those people who are taking advantage of different kinds of opportunities and services would be the ones that then might fill those holes on those revenues? Is that the theory?
I think that's part of it, and part of it is just maximizing their marketing potential
Okay.
as well,
All
and
right.
just drawing in new customers.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cam, but
Well, that was, I have a number of other accomplishments that I can go through, but I was going to move into the budget discussion
Yes.
after that, which we've already done. And rather than take up much more of the time left talking about accomplishments, we did submit a budget per the guidelines with various change packages, one of which was approved to include $500 million of general fund money to go towards our law enforcement division to offset a decrease of allocated money from our Fish and Wildlife Legal Fund to help balance that program. And as we just discussed, the various revenue increasing opportunities that we have been in discussion with Budget and OMB. So if you have more questions about that, I can entertain you with some of our accomplishments. But as we all know, 2016 is the state's bicentennial. What is not as well known is that 2016 is the state parks centennial. It's also the centennial of the federal park system. And Colonel Richard Lieber, who started our park system, was friends with Richard Mather, who was sort of seen as the father of the national park system. So our system was kind of designed at the same time in much the same way. So we're looking forward to 2016 and promoting what DNR does. 2016, we're hosting a national conference of state park directors, which will also bring in a lot of federal representatives. So we're looking forward to that opportunity to showcase what we have.
okay. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Cam. How do I'm sure the national organization kind of rates all the states and how they do in comparison to each other. Is that not true? I mean,
Well, I think there's probably a number of grading programs, if you will. I'm not familiar with many of them, but I will tell you that Dan Bortner, who heads up our Division of State Parks, is very well respected nationally. Certainly, he's one of our shining stars. But Dan has done, in my opinion, an amazing job since he's been in charge of that division, because it was in the red when he took it over.
okay.
And he turned it around very quickly. And I'm a big fan of our state park system, and I credit Dan and his staff for putting together a pretty good system and what we consider probably the best value for your entertainment dollar you're going to find.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Tallien and then Representative Clinker.
Thank you. Cam, can you go over this one more time with me? I'm looking at the amount that you've got down for federal funds, and it's gone from like 37, I mean, it's down by a lot, the amount that's on here for federal money. Now, you said something about they're redefining their terms, and it's really still all there, but it doesn't look like it's still all there. Are we losing federal money, and are we maximizing all the money that we could have?
Firstly, we're not losing any federal money. I think we're solid on that area. We're receiving the, I believe there's a misinterpretation on what was defined as federal money in earlier fiscal years as opposed to current fiscal years and on out. I mean, the budget agency agrees with that statement.
Also, to get to your point, the federal money that we receive, we do everything we can to maximize it, because it's additional money. I mean, that's every opportunity we can, we're going to take it because we can put it to good use. There's a lot of ways in which we get it, as you can imagine. Certain ways that are done through Fish and Wildlife involve the sale of our licensing through the Pitt and Robertson and Dingell Johnson Acts. Is that the more we keep Hoosiers engaged in outdoor activities that we license, the more federal matching funds we get. So how I'm using that as an example because we have a pretty extensive recruitment and retention program to keep people engaged in outdoor activities that we license, because with each license we sell, we get a corresponding matching federal money. So internally, we do everything we can to maximize the federal potential.
Representative Clinker, I think you had a question.
You mentioned, Cam, that you're not losing any federal money, but you kind of left the door open there. Are you losing state money? Are you reverting money to the state?
Well, we don't necessarily revert. We keep reserves, as everybody is required to do, and we try and keep our budget appropriation levels steady. But I wouldn't say that we're losing money or reverting money. We're just keeping things.
Are you flatlined,
Yes.
so to speak?
Yes.
You're getting the same thing that you've gotten
It
before.
was, I think part of what, before you sat down, is that our proposal was at our fiscal 15 levels. We did get a $1.5 million change package approved to go towards our law enforcement division to help offset a corresponding amount through our Fish and Wildlife Legal Fund
Very good.
to balance that out.
Also, thank you for the beautiful pool at Prophetstown.
You bet. That was going to be
Many
one
years.
of my accomplishments on my list.
I was just going to say that it's gone over beautifully, and it's brought people to Prophetstown that were not there before.
We
so
have
thank you.
had a number of programs or projects that have been successful beyond our wildest imagination.
You feel that has been
That is
successful?
one of them. That
Thank
is one that is really, that was a home run.
Well, we don't want to say we told you so, John, but we're going to say we told you so.
Do we have other questions? Okay. On your special initiatives, you alluded to the $1.5 million change to the law enforcement division. Then you have a couple of other moves with respect to dedicated funds, and you've worked those through the budget agency, I guess. And so I don't know. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add to sum up, Kim? I guess the main thing I would say is you're operating under a fairly controlled budget, which is it's good. DNR has always done a great job, and we want you to continue to do a great job. I know that's your objective. So
It is, and we have we're very visible.
yeah.
So when things go well, we know it, and when things don't go well, that's also we know about that as well. So
Well, that helps you stay on your toes.
we
That has
we
helped
provide
you
a
stay
pretty
on
good
your
service,
toes.
and our goal is to continue to do
Okay,
so.
that's good. Representative Klinker, you have anything else?
I just one more. What do we do for our veterans? There have been so many veterans that are getting free hunting, fishing licenses, or being able to enter our state parks free. There have been questions over and over again about that.
Yeah, we have a couple different programs. We have one weekend a year where veterans are given free admission to the parks. Our licensing system has a break for veterans. But one of the things that we did this year that we were very proud of, in rule, there was there were criteria set, minimum criteria set for persons who want to become conservation officers. And that was primarily education-based. We added to that this year criteria that allowed honorably discharged members of military service to apply and become eligible to go through the conservation officer training program. So we feel like we capture a very seasoned, mature group of young men and women that were otherwise unnecessarily excluded based on the way the rule originally read. And
Have you gotten a lot of takers?
I will tell you that this year's process has, through initiatives like that, we have had, I think the period of time closing for initial applicants, one of our highest by far years ever, and we attribute a lot of that to the fact that we've opened it up to veterans of military service to become part of that program.
Okay. Yes, Senator Tyan.
Thanks. I just want to go back to this because I'm still trying to make sure I get it. You said that you're basically keeping your budget flatlined from the 2015 number, although the submitted for 17 actually puts you down, right? Lower than the 2015 number. And it's actually down almost $30 million from the 2014 number.
Right, yep.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, from 2013.
Yep.
So over the past 4 years, you guys have actually lost a lot of your money.
I'm not prepared to say that at this time. I need to sit back with the budget agency people and see how the prior year numbers were calculated, because I don't feel that $30 million crunch at my level. So I'm going to have to get back with you and
Well, I
explain
wish
that
somebody
much
would,
better.
because I'm looking at it, I'm just looking at numbers on a
Understood.
sheet,
Yep.
and it goes from 166 million in 13 to 132 million in 17.
Yep.
And why isn't that a loss of whatever it is, 30-some million dollars?
Well, I think we've kind of been probing around over that question. I think if they don't have an answer, why, I think it's good for us to get it here in December so that we can get ready for the session. Thank you for the question.
Up on that.
Yeah, Representative Cherry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have about users' fees, would your land that you rent to people, you receive cash, or do you receive equipment or in-kind things for possibly some property that you, open space that you rent?
That is, we have a number of properties, some parks, some fish and wildlife areas that we've acquired over the years that were partially or at one time fully in ag use. And we still have portions of some of these properties that are farmed. And we do enter into leases with someone to cultivate it, farm it. And the rates typically are lower than market for the area. However, we require the lessee, the farmer, to leave a little bit more of natural buffer, to leave some of the crops standing for creation of wildlife habitat. And over time, some of these properties, we've slowly brought them back to natural states, reducing the amount of ag use. But it's done over time because that's, there's an expense to it, and these leases help defray the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, I think Zach might be able to shed some light on that fiscal 13 expenditure.
Good.
That looks disparate.
That's the day we like for you to talk, Zach.
Part of the problem is that expenditures you're seeing in fiscal 13 are overstated. What has happened is that we often have, in the budget bill, they might say that, here's a fund that receives a general appropriation along with a dedicated appropriation. How it's spent out, though, might be that in total, spent out of the general fund account, or if it's used as federal match out of a federal account. What happens occasionally is that as the dedicated dollars move from the one region over to where they're spent out, it tends to get counted twice as an expenditure. See here is that as dedicated dollars got moved to a pot for expenditure, you got that pot, and then later as it was being spent as a state expenditure. Usually we try to do it.
Yeah, Zach, maybe the best way to do that would be for you to work with Mike and kind of show us a transactional movement of how that happened, because I think we all had the same question that Senator Italian's raising there. We're just trying to figure out what it means.
Is that
Okay.
dedicated is higher?
Okay.
There's some double counting going on. Why that 13 number looks.
Okay. Well, if you could get back to us on that, Mike, we'd appreciate it. All right. Thank you all for coming in, Cam, and appreciate your work out there at DNR, okay?
Everybody have a happy holiday season. We'll see you in January, I'm sure.
Right. Okay, next we have item, and we have Tom Easterly with us. If you want to run through that, you think that would be helpful to us, well, we'd be glad to do that. Great. Tom, how long have you been with the item now? Well, we appreciate your service, and that's pretty good tenure to be a commissioner of any agency here in the state of Indiana, and it's also a tribute to your willingness to provide public service, because I know you came to us from the private sector, and IDEM is not the easiest agency to run. There's always controversy and issues with the people who are being regulated. So we want to thank you up front for your work and your time that you've been with us, okay? Wow. Looks like something's happened. It's connecting. I see those numbers on my satellite TV service down in Texas, so I know that it's just a matter of time. You know, I think we have copies. All right.
signed by the EPA. Watch that. Right amount of money there, and we're spending it on Crisis Liability Trust Fund, which is our largest dedicated fund. Like the tax. A little bit by the $90.
Is that fund active? Do you still, okay.
We're doing, I think, I'll say,
So we're continuing to doing cleanups in that area, which seems,
all the cleanups that people do cleanups. Speedway has that special carve out. The individual company more than $3 million a year, they do more than $3 million. So we owe them, I think, $22 million.
who is it you're talking about, the Speedway?
Gas station,
Oh, the Speedway gas stations. I thought you were talking about the Motor Speedway.
that would be a big thing for,
Okay.
it's still a big thing in our budgeting, right? Because we have this,
Yes.
it's owed to somebody, but it's,
So Speedway's been very active in engaging in a lot of cleanups and,
we check, they're actually cheaper for large petroleum market.
okay.
All of our other permit funds, whether they add up to more, but for all the other things, very more than wastewater. Challenges which the budget agencies help.
Okay.
So there's a page you can't read, but you have another page in your. And where they come from, and then the totals are, this includes federal funds, because roughly constant. Our totals are the same, but for the
Okay.
for each time. Become more efficient.
Do you have any relationship with the local solid waste management districts? Well, do you have an oversight relationship in that you regulate them or monitor them or check to see what they're doing?
No,
You don't?
asked for a law a few years ago.
And then, do you have any oversight over them with respect to, for example, their budgets and their activities and where they put their money? Okay, that answers my question.
So we have, essentially.
Thank you very much, Tom. Questions, committee members, alternates? Yes, Representative Clinker.
I do want to tell you, Commissioner, that our area is really working with the water system in Lafayette, West Lafayette. It's actually, the streets have been in disarray trying to do the right thing with very large vessels so that the water does not go into the Wabash River. That's it. Right.
All but 3 communities have approved plans. Now, it's up to 45 that are completely done. These are.
They are very expensive.
And they are very.
Takes a long time. And how are they paying for that? Do you know, Commissioner? Local fees. Okay. I wondered if there were federal grants. Uh-huh. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Tom. Tell your folks we appreciate their good work, okay?
We'll learn about technology.
Yeah, our next presentation is going to be from the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority, and Bill, I guess you're here. Bill Hanna, the best salesman in the state of Indiana, is here to present that today. And is it my understanding you're also going to have another person doing some presenting today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have
Okay.
Ty Warner, who's the executive director of the
Okay, good. All right. We'll, whenever you guys can get set up and ready to go, why we're ready to go for you, okay? Okay. Well, we'll give Ben a second to see if he can get her going this one more time here.
I've tried everything I can.
Is that it? All right.
Plugged in everything, that's the extent.
I'm sure you've gotten farther than I would have been. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and we'll just follow along.
Just as a quick overview, I wanted to just talk briefly about what we've done over the last week heading forward. We've heard a lot of comments about being project specific and more strategic. That's what I hope to get from.
If you just flip to the first slide, and I will move very quickly because of the level of education with this crowd on our group, and just basically say I want to thank you for having put together the RDA. We've been operating with a $27.5 million budget annually. We have a 7-member board of directors. We're a small staff of 5. We keep our administrative budget around 3%. What's important about the board to remember? Okay. Okay. So if you have the whole packet, the document is the printed, that I'm referencing here is the printed PowerPoint. Thank you, Bill. So it's the second page there, and again, we have a 7-member board, but I want to stress the importance of the membership of the state of Indiana in this partnership, and it's best characterized by the chairman's position, which is an appointee of the governor who has veto power over any significant financial action that we take. So the administration here has a heavy hand in oversight and functioning of what we do and don't approve. It requires 5 members to support anything. And so with all of the communities represented up there and the county governments and the governor's office, it requires a great deal of consensus to do any of these projects. Just going forward, you'll see some of the, and again, I'll be very quick with these, where it says who we are at the top there, which is the third page, third slide. We talk about some of the projects that we do. We mainly focus on the Gary Airport, the shoreline redevelopment, rail and bus transportation, and economic development, and that's according to the original statute and where we primarily function. Our partners in growth are on the next page, and you know who most of those are. I only make the point that the partnership is very diverse, and it has a broad range of not only municipal players, but a private sector as well, which is an important factor in the RD's success and the leverage that we bring to the table that we'll talk about in just a minute. Going project by project as an update, the Gary Chicago International Airport is the next thing that you see there. I think you're fairly familiar with the state's investment in it. We've received quite a bit of leverage out of the project, and this year specifically have had some significant progress in that the new runway is in place. If you flip the page where it says tested on the right-hand corner there, you'll see the actual picture of what's occurred this year, which is we built the end of the runway. We've also built the rail line, the new rail line for CN to switch over, and CN has actually switched over onto that new rail line. And what a lot of people don't understand about the airport is that it was a Class 1 rail project much more than it ever was a runway extension project. So the negotiation with them, dealing with environmental issues and other things occupied a great deal of the time and negotiation. And we're past those issues primarily moving forward. Trains running on the new line. The airport is also looking at business development strategies with their new partner in Avports, which is important because Avports also manages facilities like Piatone, which are not dissimilar to Gary's potential in that they occupy the third space in a large metro aviation market, Piatone being New York City.
Bill, this slide says that expansion will create more than 2,000 new jobs by 2025, 156 million annual earnings, and 420 million plus in annual overall yearly economic impact. What is that's happening? Are you actually landing and taking off more planes, or because I never heard that there's an actual increase in air traffic in and out of the Gary Airport? Does this contemplate that happening, or is it happening? Or fill me in on whether there's actually any progress on this.
Mr. Chairman, it's happening slowly now. What this contemplates is a more aggressive move toward the business development strategy that incorporates the Chicago market in, which is to say, so we did a business plan with Landerman Brown, this world-known aviation firm that also works in Indianapolis and Chicago. The concept is that as the economy grows, and it's starting to show signs now in the aviation market, that the hub areas for places like Southwest at Midway will occupy more of the footprint of Chicago's space. And so therefore, you'll want to move some aviation assets over. Corporate and GA, some cargo to begin, and eventually you get into the passenger service. So it's an incremental progression, and it also incorporates the land development around the facility.
Well, that's a plan, but has any of it happened?
Well, the most substantial thing lately is we've had a new hangar put in place with the fixed base operator, and again, you've had the P3 group come online that has begun the discussions with Chicago Aviation. So it sort of goes in a pattern of we had to have the project done in order to make the space available, and beyond just that is to prove that we could function in a competent way in an appropriate FAA-supported project. So I think the proof has been put down, but you're right, the business development aspect of it is yet to be matured, and that's part of the next phase of growth.
Well, do you have any actual contract commitments?
Not as of right now. Okay. So again, you know, it's a timing issue with the thank you. Timing issue with the project. So we're at a phase right now where this would be the appropriate time to start seeing those things line up within the next, 12 to 18 months. if not sooner. So the board was reconstructed last session, and that's been an important thing. There's more business acumen present on the board, and we're hopeful that we'll have a chairman appointed by the governor's office soon too, and that could be a significant factor as well. So we'll continue to work in partnership with them. At the end of the day, you know, supporting the board and pushing those issues is what we can do, and then get the project complete too and move forward. Moving along with the shoreline, which is really a quality of place issue. What you see there is a picture of the Whiting Marquette Park. That is the most significant thing we've done so far in terms of immediate development, and shows you how AV can be increased with these things. And one of the issues in Lake County is we've had a tremendous loss of population. We've lost 10% of the population since 1970, roughly, while the rest of the country's doubled in size. This looks a lot like the Chicago suburbs that are nearby in the Hyde Park area and the kind of development they have for public space. And if you turn the page, you'll see what it was before, which was a gravel parking lot in your upper left-hand corner where it's marked 2012. And then on the right, what it is as we sit here now. What's significant about it is not the facility itself from an economic development standpoint, but rather people have started to move back in. We have our first high-density development, Chicago-style, on the main drag in Whiting. This project was done with BP in support, and people are actually starting to come back, and that neighborhood's been stabilized. So that's an example of how these things, there's a cause and effect with them. The next one is an example is the Hammond-Wolf Lake area where it's been cleaned up and property values are on the rise, neighborhood stability. If you keep moving forward, you'll see Gary Marquette Park, which is a similar thing where you have a good neighborhood in the Miller area, and this helps to provide, again, another level of stability, but also to draw in new investment, not only in the housing, but it will be connected to the train as well for transportation-oriented development on the other end, where you start to have these bookends of public infrastructure that cause the redevelopment of the community. So they're significant outside of just the investments themselves. If you go to the next page, this speaks to our more direct economic development efforts in conjunction with IEDC, where we've, in the last 2 years, relocated 5 companies from Illinois and expanded an additional 3 that also had Illinois options. And this, again, we're taking advantage of the lower tax rates, the attractiveness of our area, and this is unique to Northwest Indiana because these are companies that don't want to be outside of the Chicago marketplace. They want to be there, but they want our tax environment. And they have some capital needs that need to be met in order to make those things happen. It's been over 1,000 jobs that have been relocated and hired in this process, and about $500 million in new investment. And those things are in existence today. The expansions are underway at the facilities and are ramping up this year and going into next year. The WBE-MBE slide, you see the next page, we make an effort to hire local, to circulate the dollars throughout the Indiana economy and support women-owned and minority-owned businesses along the process to create equity and bring the neighborhoods along with the progress of the RDA. And I think we lead the state in accomplishing the percentages that we have within that area. If you go to the next slide, this kind of gets to the heart of the progress financially. So we've invested $211 million, the RDA has. We've attracted an additional $650 million, and this is not modeling. These are actual dollars that have come in through federal and the private sector matching on all the areas that we have discussed. We have created wealth for the community, and the projection going through 2033 is that about 11,600 jobs will be created. What's significant about that, it's not a huge number that you think, we're trying to be conservative as well, but what's really important is these are quality jobs. And so I'm going to talk really quickly about where we're going next. And that really centers on connectivity to Chicago. There was just an IU study put out saying that Northwest Indiana is suffering from not only a loss of jobs, but a replacement of jobs and underemployment, the replacement being the lower paying wages and so forth, population loss and that kind of thing all mounts up to really telling a story where we cannot sustain ourselves organically, economically. There is no community there that has enough employment or wealth to really turn Northwest Indiana around. So tying to Chicago is going to be really where we're going. So the next slide says the next 10 years. Transportation is at the center of that. And That really is the Westlake Corridor expansion that you helped us out with operating dollar-wise last session. We have 12 communities signed on with financial obligations. We're about 75% of the way there with the local commitment to funds to match up for the federal dollars. It'll be a $500 million project, half paid by local and RDA, other half by federal sources. But that's just the beginning. So what we're really trying to do is take people to work and bring their money back. We're trying to bring work to people, which is the relocation of the companies, and we're trying to get repopulation here. We want people to move back in. In order to do that, we have to look a lot more like the north and west suburbs in terms of public transportation assets. They're not like they are in other places where you're doing traffic mitigation. These are job shuttles. The same job in Chicago that exists in Northwest Indiana pays about 40% more on average in Chicago than it does in Indiana. So this is a model that can work. Chicago's the 9th largest economy in the world, and we could be the gateway for Indiana to Chicago, and we should be. But we're not going to be unless we start looking a lot more like the west and north suburbs. So the quality of place is important for rehabilitation, economic development for today, but the big push is going to be around the train and TOD. So if you turn the next page, you'll see an infographic that really lays out our strategy and really what I was hoping to focus on in terms of a presentation of a partnership for the state of Indiana. We want to take the existing train stations that are identified on the blue line at Hammond, East Chicago, Gary, and Portage, and then with the completion of the South Shore going to the Dyer, Munster area, you'll see the red dots there. TOD, as many of you know, is different than a train station. We've had train stations for years. The suburbs have TOD. TOD has a real estate component to it. It has commerce associated with it. It has increment that drives public infrastructure. None of that has ever been done in Northwest Indiana. So we're talking about completely modernizing the concept, putting all of those components in place around these existing train stations, and then building it down to South Lake County to the same end. This will give us a level playing field with Chicago and absolutely will attract back residents. We've seen progress in places like Bronzeville, Wicker Park, the near south side of Chicago, that really proves that even in an endangered economic area or even areas that are unsafe or have challenges with schools and other things, if you put these kind of access points in place, early adapters will go there. We are more affordable, and that's how you spur out this economic growth. So the whole thing moving forward with the RDA is to take what we've already put in place on the shoreline, leverage that out with the redevelopment commissions at the city, grow those residential areas, clean up the business districts, put these points, these transportation hubs in, which are really about job access, and blow out the investment that would really position us as a true suburb of the city of Chicago, giving our citizens equal access to jobs and opportunities, raising the level of educational attainment level and the folks that live there and opportunities for people who live there today. And we really believe that's going to be the key to turning things around. If you look at the next slide, this incorporates all of those components moving forward. So a renewed focus on access, TOD, quality of place, the issue that Senator Kennelly pointed out with about aggressive development of the Gary Airport would produce something that would roughly bring a return to the state coffers back about $3 to every one put in. What we did was look at what we've been able to generate in income for the state of Indiana over the first 10 years, which was meager by comparison because these things start out slowly. The AV builds up over time, new investments come. So we've made about $40 million over the first 10. But moving forward, as you see, there's a sharp increase on the graph where a lot of these projects start to mature, the new investment comes in, Westlake is incorporated, new developments in some of these shoreline communities. And then you see a little bit of a leveling off. But it's an important thing because what we really want to say is we're different than everybody else in the state in terms of potential for new revenue for the state of Indiana and job access for the citizens of Northwest Indiana. We're not different in any other way. We're Hoosiers, but what we have is untapped potential. And it exists in finding access to Chicago and continuing to improve the area for inhabitation and people moving in, doing real estate development. And that equates to a return to the state in perpetuity that far exceeds the amount that has been invested, which is how we should be viewing this, by the way. We believe very strongly that we're here to make money for the state of Indiana. When we're doing that, everybody's winning. everybody's benefiting. We don't want just a supplement to replicate our own activities. The last page there speaks to the cumulative effect over the next 10 years on local and other units. The state's money is incorporated in there as well, but you can see too it grows $308 million projected for all units of government across the board. And again, that's direct and indirect spending, new investments, property tax, sales tax, the whole gamut of things that go that are spawned through activities like ours. Finally, I would just say to you that I firmly believe that we cannot sustain the RDA without the state's involvement, not only from a fiscal standpoint, but from the standpoint of having a formal partnership with the state. We live in a very politically challenging area, as you know. It's divided not only in a partisan way, but through multiple municipalities. Economic development doesn't care about city boundaries, it cares about markets. Without an umbrella group like this, and without the firm authority and partnership of the state of Indiana to give us the mandate to get these things done, we could not exist. My fear is if we don't continue, that graph looks very flat, that we cannot tell you that the communities will continue to support this effort. I think that the state's presence in it has been absolutely critical, and without that continued partnership, we really look at going backwards. And we know what that looks like. We saw for decades what did it look like without an RDA and without the state's involvement in Northwest Indiana. It looks like decay and loss of opportunity and loss of wealth, and we know what that is. This is turning the corner. It's real. You can see it, touch it, feel it. You've been a part of it. And I'm telling you, I think that without your continued involvement, that this thing is in jeopardy of being productive over the next 10 years. We also have with us the director of NERPC, Ty Warner, who represents 53 elected officials in the area, and I think just would like to speak to the idea that we're all together to the extent that we can be on trying to renew this from Northwest Indiana.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. Again, I'm Ty Warner. I'm Executive Director of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. That's the Council of Governments for Northwestern Indiana, so that's 41 municipalities and 3 counties. It also functions as the MPO, or the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Northwestern Indiana. NERPC and RDA are very closely connected, and our missions are very, very similar. Our funding is primarily through transportation dollars. If you know the MPOs in your areas, you know that. So we do a lot of work in Northwestern Indiana for infrastructure improvements to make the whole environment of Northwestern Indiana a better place. But we do that primarily through the transportation dollars that we have available. We rely on partners such as the RDA, and the RDA is a huge one, to be able to implement a much broader picture of how to advance Northwestern Indiana. The vision of Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission was developed through the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan, a huge grassroots effort, had never been done before in Northwestern Indiana, that is totally in sync with the RDA's mission. In fact, that plan calls out the RDA multiple times throughout that document as the implementing agency to help carry out some of those activities from the comprehensive plan. We have multiple work activities that are aligned. You heard Bill talk about livable communities. You heard him talk about quality of place. This is all over what the plan is about and what NERPC is trying to achieve for Northwestern Indiana, and the RDA is a very important part of that, and the rail aspects as well, to bring transit-oriented development to Northwestern Indiana and take advantage of those stations. There's multiple implementation aspects, as I mentioned. Regional partnerships that the RDA and NERPC have been involved in. Brownfields Coalition to help fund and remediate brownfield sites and bring those sites back for redevelopment. As you know, that's a huge issue for Northwestern Indiana, and is a huge economic development potential to bring those brownfield sites back to some kind of productivity and environmental help. Also the Marquette Plan for the Lakeshore. This is a huge project for U.S. Congressman Visclosky. The RDA and NERPC have signed a cooperative agreement with the Department of Natural Resources to help carry out activities to further that Marquette Plan along those 45 miles of Lakeshore, Indiana's only access to Lake Michigan. The bottom line here is that NERPC, as the Council of Governments, is totally supportive of the RDA's work. In fact, it passed a resolution in support of the RDA and the continuance of the RDA, and that the resolution was voted on unanimously by NERC's members, which are not just Lake and Porter counties, but also LaPorte County as well. So the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission is totally supportive of the RDA's work. Basically, Northwestern Indiana is really getting its act together, and the RDA has been a big part of that. We have been working very cooperatively all across the region. It's really a new dawn, a new era in Northwestern Indiana, and the RDA is an important part of that picture for Indiana's benefit. Thanks.
Any questions or comments, Senator Italian?
Absolutely, thank you. I really am pleased to see this presentation here today, because I think that between the two of you, you know, sometimes Northwest Indiana has come to this General Assembly not always on the same page. So our delegation has not always been together on all things. But on this particular issue, we are all together. The community is all together. NERC, you know, representing the 45 communities that, you know, 41 plus 3 counties that you represent, to have all of those people unanimously support the resolution supporting the RDA is a huge step. Everybody in Northwest Indiana recognizes that the RDA has essentially become our own economic development group, and that you've managed to leverage the state money in great ways. And that's something that I was a little bit unsure about. You know, we know how much money the state has spent, but how much money have you actually leveraged to bring back in addition to that?
It's been about $650 million in direct spending from other sources, outside sources other than the state of Indiana or the RDA, Senator.
In the last decade?
In the last decade.
Yeah. So we all think it's really important that this continue. This is not a state giveaway. This is an economic development investment. So thank you.
Any other questions? Bill? You're asking for a continuation of a $10 million subsidy from the state a year. Isn't that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And the original commitment was out of the Major Moves money.
Yes, sir.
The Major Moves money's gone.
Yes.
So you're asking the state to give you in one particular area of the state a straight-up economic development subsidy through this organization, and generally we don't have any other programs where we do that. We tend to deal with things on a kind of a project-by-project basis. So as I think about that, some of the thoughts that are going through my mind are, the Gary Airport shows a lot of promise, but there's never been any performance of any kind that I see. Senator Charbonneau had a bill, was it last year or the year before, that saved $4 to $5 million?
Yes, that was a property tax loophole that was closed.
Yeah. So we found $5 million there. Is that right?
Between 4 and 5 million, roughly, sir.
Where's that money going?
He has been obligated to operate the new Westlake expansion as a part of the application for the federal funds. We had to have operational dollars there, and that was the thing that we promised to do with it when the bill was passed.
And then don't we give NICD a lot of money otherwise in other areas of the budget already? Don't we support them quite a bit into the millions of dollars every year?
That is true. Well, one of the things that we're trying to present here, too, is that NICD does a great job with running a rail, but we've never really tackled TOD, which is a moneymaker for everybody, including the state. And a lot of our projection is based on changing their business model along with ours and doing it the way that it's done elsewhere in the country so that those supplements lessen over time.
And I'm glad to see that you attracted some new businesses up there. and you mentioned that you work through the IEDC in addition to that. So why can't we just work through the IEDC and meet the same metrics and the same tests that everybody else does? Because the IEDC has a budget. I mean, why should we just shovel out $10 million a year extra for you guys?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell you that we've had a good partnership with IEDC, but they're primarily focused on job attraction for today. In an area like ours, what we're trying to illustrate here is if that infrastructure is not put in place, we can drag companies over, and that's a good thing, but it's not raising the employment level or opportunity. They're primarily manufacturing opportunities still, and those are important for today, but it's not building the kind of place that kids want to stay or move back to after they graduate from Purdue. Whereas a train to Chicago or TOD, high-density living, that works. We know it works. It works in Chicago. It's working all over the country. It's a game changer.
Well, I mentioned to Senator Charbonneau, one of the things that you're trying to assure me, and Senator Italian is reinforcing this, is the fact that the units are trying to work together. They're trying to use somewhat of a regional approach, and I appreciate that, and I think it has value. I asked Senator Charbonneau, I said, well, should we have Unigov in Lake County like we did in Marion County? And he looked at me like I'd shot him. And so, you know, should we pay $10 million a year just to get you guys to cooperate with each other? Or, I mean, help me out here.
I think it's there's real benefits beyond just the cooperation. The cooperation attests to something that's a measurement of progress in our area, and it shouldn't have to be. It should happen naturally. But the projects themselves are driving the economy, and the more beneficial these are, the better the economy does, the more it attaches itself to an urban area, the less politics begin to dominate. And we've been dominated by that for far too long, and this is a game changer with respect to that. So.
You know, I hear you, Bill, and I'm asking these questions not to just push back against you or as a way of telling you no. I'm asking you these questions to force a justification that I think we need to hear before we're interested in doing this kind of thing, and just having that kind of a general subsidy type of a support. And so I don't know if this is the answer or not, and I do appreciate the things that you have done, and the Development Authority has done some things, and I appreciate the cooperation of the units up there too. So it's a tough question, and it's one that I think we need to continue to work on, and you know, we kind of gave you a special place at the table by inviting you as a non-agency of the state of Indiana to come make a presentation at the state budget hearings, because I think the question is important enough that we need to listen. But I think you have to prove the case rather than we have to sit here and figure out a way to get it done for you, is in my opinion, okay? So I think we need to keep working on this and look at other methods of doing things. It's not just the $10 million. And you know that I agree with you, that I think that you represent a geographical area where we have an opportunity market with the city of Chicago up there. But I think that I think we're moving into territory here with the ask for the funds that's presenting a picture for the budget folks in the state. We're going to have to evaluate this very carefully, because we've had requests from Evansville on some things, and we've turned them down on some things as a pocket or an area that could use some help. We've had some requests from the Fort Wayne area, and we've been a little cautious about committing more money to them. So I think this is going to take some work to make a convincing case, and I know you know that, and I know you'll keep after it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and again, we recognize we're different. We're not, and it really rests in the potential of Chicago, as you just aptly pointed out, that we want to be the leaders for creating revenue for the state and job opportunities. In order to do that, we have to have this infrastructure. And while Evansville has its own potential and own opportunities, it's really, this is clearly unique in the aspect that it's the 9th largest economy in the world, and you see places like New Jersey or Northern Virginia attached to places like New York City and Washington, D.C., and it does work, and we can do that like no other part of the state can.
One specific point, I would like to know who would fly to Gary and why, and for what purpose.
I think there again, Mr. Senator, it's I wouldn't even ask the question who would fly to Gary, and this is my own deduction over the years has come to who would fly to Chicago and not really need to utilize Midway or O'Hare. If we're going to really be part of the Chicago aviation market and all of this, it's about fitting into that market. Gary as a market itself would not sustain the kind of.
Okay, you show me the passengers that are coming in for that then. And we've already spent a fair amount of money to help you on that project, and I don't think we've seen a whole lot of anything. That's why I asked if you had any contracts. I mean, a contract with a private company that says we want to fly our executives for Boeing in and out of the Gary Airport, that tells me something, okay? Chairman Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, and appreciate the struggles. And I think having the local elected officials come together, as Senator Talion said, I think I have come to a realization and understanding that some of the differences of all the elected officials up in the Lake County in Northwest Indiana make that a unique situation for the state. My question and kind of thoughts are, it seems like we've created a tool where build it and they will come. Who does the economic development recruitment? Are the LEDOs involved? Are you the LEDO? Are you wanting to become the regional REDO?
That's a great question, and IEDC has talked, I know, to some of you about this Regional Cities Initiative, and our conversation with them has been our regional cities not in Indiana, it's in Chicago, so we have said that we would coordinate along with NERC and the Forum, who does represent the LEDOs, the Strategic Economic Development Plan for Northwest Indiana. And it looks a lot like what jumps out, if you read that report IEDC put together, all of those places have put light rail in, quality of place issues, they've elevated the things that we're already doing. Where we're short in Northwest Indiana and where the RDA can help as an investment arm, working with the LEDOs and with the Metropolitan Planning Group, is things like Ileana Expressway and spec buildings. We don't have a lot of inventory, so we're limited with the attraction. So we're bringing a lot of companies over, but that's limited by the product that we provide. So adding that component to the things that we're doing here is going to make a difference in even bolstering up that number of having the light manufacturers continue to move out of Chicago and over into Indiana. So yes, our desire is to take lead in creating and coordinating the Strategic Economic Development Plan, but to fully utilize our partners to do what they do best in their lane. We've been too fragmented, as we've talked about, for far too long, but having all of our eyes on the same ball and defining whose job is what in terms of moving it forward is what we're about in this next phase with the RDA.
So I heard you say you're the lead on the infrastructure issue to the Forum. I mean,
yes.
It kind of which comes first, the cart or the horse issue. I mean,
I would tell you
have a working relationship with the Forum and the LEDOs?
We do. We have one with the Times Media Corporation who's involved in one region is a group that they've started, and it all is centered on the RDA. And the reason is, again, up in our area, if you don't have the fiscal prowess to build something that you can see, touch, and feel, it's not going to happen. And the only group that has the ability to do that is the RDA. So all of the other groups have existed prior to our arrival. And there's nothing uniquely special about us other than we can make things happen and break ground in a way that's never happened before. And doing it with our partners makes it a lot more effective. And again, even at the airport, we're just getting started. That project is getting done. That's our primary focus. But adding the LEDOs and the MPO into the equation and really broadening out things like that will make the difference with business development. So it's been a progressive thing. But we're at the point right now where we have enough proof behind us, and with the financial abilities that we have, we can take that centerpiece and say, okay, guys, how is this going to look? Who's going to do what? And how are we going to hold ourselves accountable for results going into this next decade?
Can I add to that? Just as the Council of Governments, again, we're very well coordinated with this. This is not duplication. This is not, everybody's been getting themselves in sync and aligned. We work very, very closely together. That's been, I think, a huge difference in the last several years for Northwestern Indiana. I think it would be the wrong message to say that it's $10 million to help bring the region together. It's $10 million to be able to take that collaboration that's happening and really put, as Bill said, tangible, concrete things growing from that collaboration that's taking place. Northwestern Indiana is unique in that it's the only entry point that Indiana really has to that huge Chicago market. It's trying to be able to pull what's happening in Chicago to Northwestern Indiana. We're very aware of that, and that's why we're very supportive of this.
With the Lidos, too, just to speak to them very quickly, they do a good job of the traditional economic development model, but if you picture Crawfordsville, like where you're from, Representative Brown, if you had a market like Chicago next to it, and now all of a sudden you had a TOD, an access point, your whole economic development strategy as a community would be markedly different. So it's a place like Dyer where they say, well, let me get a company in and tax abatement and TIF. And what we're saying is let's flip that around entirely, tap into a market you never thought of, which is a new residential buyer that wants to get on a train, go to work in Chicago, bring their money back, spend it in commercial and other areas that do not exist in these neighborhoods today. Right now, the only model they have to work with is the traditional incentive package, industrial manufacturing, please come on over. We're never going to get a corporate headquarters of any consequence like they get in Naperville and the west suburbs because we don't have the workforce to be able to fill that building up and provide the employment. You stick a train there, our kids start to stay, people move in, it's more affordable, taxes are lower. We do have good school systems in Porter County and good parts of Lake County. It's ripe for that. And now you're in a different level of economic development. The game has entirely changed. And you're stopped with scraping the bottom of the barrel, if you will, just hoping for a company to come in. And that's really where we'd like to take this.
Well, thank you for your oh, yeah, Senator Italian, I'm sorry.
I would just like to address your question, Chairman Brown. One of the things that we have in Northwest Indiana, and the Times has been instrumental in putting this together, it's a group called One Region, One Vision. And every year for the past several years, they've brought community leaders from all over 3 counties to big events where we have discussions about the ongoing plans and the RDA. And the RDA actually in its past decade has become acknowledged as the economic development entity for Northwest Indiana. Everybody in Northwest Indiana now recognizes them. And this past meeting, which we had in the fall, I can't remember when, they sort of did a what do you call it, a poll of the group, and there were a couple hundred people there of what is the most important thing for legislation this year. And the top priority for this entire group was making sure that the RDA got refunded. So we are together in this, and they have become the lead agency for all of the others, including NERC, including the forum.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you for the presentation, Bill and Tyler. We appreciate you being here.
Chairman, thank you.
We have, we're going to go into recess. We have some pretty meaty agencies this afternoon. It's almost a murderer's row lineup of Department of Transportation, which I know there are some issues that we want to talk about. Department of Toxicology, which needs to be performing at a higher level. Department of Revenue, which we've had some discussions about, and then FSSA, the monster of them all. So enjoy your break. Don't eat too much. Let's figure out what we're going to do this afternoon. Oh boy, that'd be the trifecta, wouldn't it? All right, we'll see you all at 1 o'clock.